ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another Football Manager experiment, where today we're taking a look at what would happen if Chelsea and Yeovil swapped positions in the league. So Chelsea are in the Vanarama National League, and Yeovil have been popped into the Premier League. That's pretty much it. It's quite simple, quite an obvious experiment. And it'll be interesting to see how things go. My prediction, obviously, that Chelsea will rise up quite quickly. I don't think they'll end up selling many of their players. And Yeovil, I think they'll get relegated first season. How they get on the next couple of seasons will be interesting to see, because obviously they'll have that money from the Premier League. But there's only one real way to find out how they get on, and that is to take a look. Obviously, nothing has changed otherwise. Tuchel is still at Chelsea, although he's not in real life. And of course, at Yeovil, they've still got the same setup as at the start of the game as well, with Darren Sarlane as manager and all the players. So, with that, let's jump ahead and see how the first year goes. Okay, so we are a year on now, and it looks like Chelsea have in fact won the league, as probably expected. How do they get on? Yeah, undefeated, as you'd expect. You got Lukaku in there with an average rating of 7.96, Rudiger with a 7.6, and N'Golo Kante as well with a 7.55. Dagenham Redbridge being the ones to go up with them. Fortunately for Wrexham, they've missed out. Yeah, nothing surprising there. How have they got on in any of the other competitions? They obviously were in the Europa Super Cup, and they won that, so that's good to see. They were in the Champions League as well. It looks like they got through to the quarterfinals of the Champions League to play Liverpool, where they only lost 1-0. So they only just missed out of actually getting further in the Champions League. As well, they actually won the FA Trophy and FA Cup, so they'll be in Europe next season. So that'll be interesting to see in the lower leagues, kind of what's happened there. Transfer-wise, how did they get on? So, wow. Who did they actually sign, though, in real time? They signed Jack O'Connell, Cedric, Scott McKenna, all for 24.5 million for Jack O'Connell, blimey. What about the players that have left the club? Reece James went to Real Madrid, Joe Hay to Crystal Palace, Humphreys, Ben Elliott, McEachran, Brooking, Kennedy. So there are a few players that have left the club, and a few that have signed as well. So it'll be interesting to see, as the seasons go on, if they do slowly lose all these big names, how easily they can get kind of back up into the Premier League from such a low starting position. But we've also want to see how Yeovil got on. So we predicted that it would be bottom of the table. Yep, and it is bottom of the table. Now, they did beat Leicester 3-2, so that's cool, and they drew against Crystal Palace, so they did manage to get 4 points, which is, to be fair, not bad, all things considered. But how did they get on in any of the other competitions? So they got through to the Caribou Cup 4th round, losing to Man United 2-0, which isn't a bad result, but they did also lose 3-1 to MK Dons, otherwise getting beat quite comfortably in all other games in the league other than the Leicester and the Palace game that we saw. Looking at their transfer history, though, what have we got? Have we got anything that's of note, really? Isaac Stones, Keelan O'Connell, they're the only real signings they've made. Obviously, not much spent and not much brought in. But that said, hopefully, yep, there you go. Bank balance of 69 million. So they've got a good chunk of money now. Hopefully that'll kind of help them with moving up the divisions again. We'll have to see how they get on in the Championship. But with that, let's jump ahead and take a look at what happens next. Okay then, so we have jumped 3 years on. So we're in 2025 and Chelsea have won the Championship. So it looks like they might have actually just, as expected, they've just shot up the leagues. First in League 2, first in League 1, and they've won the Championship. So they've already got back to the Premier League in a few seasons. Tuchel being there, Lukaku, Gallagher, Havertz, all still there. They are playing a few younger players by the looks of it, like Castledine and Angerin, which is nice to see. They've brought in Dominic Calvert-Lewin as well and Luke Shaw. So they have signed a few players over these years, and they've spent a lot of money doing it as well. Wow, okay. Maxi Gomez, Mazraoui, Dean Henderson coming in, Maitland-Niles, Lingard, Rafinha. I mean, there is plenty of players here that are being brought in. Castad, Vlasic, Soyuncu, Gomez, Calvert-Lewin, as we saw. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of money being spent for a team that... I mean, they were in League 2 at this point when they spent 134 million. But they did bring in 270, to be fair. Trevor Chalobah leaving, Jorginho, Hudson-Odoi, Mount, Kante, Mendy, Sarr, Barkley. So there are plenty of players that have left the club to kind of fund these other transfers. Although, more recently, not so much, that's for sure. Like I said, Jesse Lingard and Timo Werner leaving the club there. But Lenglet coming in as well. So, interesting to see. Looking at the history, though, we can see, 120 points. Very, very comfortable, really, in the end for them. Let's jump a couple back, though, and we can see how they got on in all the other competitions. So, they were in the Papa John's Trophy as well as the Caribou Cup and Europa League this season. So we can see here how have they got on. Well, I'm going to have to try and find this a little bit. We can see it looks like they got knocked out of the FA Cup in the third round on penalties to Fulham and lost in the Caribou Cup quarterfinals against Newcastle. Now, it does look like they got to the final of the Papa John's Trophy, but actually lost it to Leeds under 23s, which is a little bit of a surprise considering, but they does look like they had a big rotation in the squad for that game. But they did get to the Europa League final and actually won it 2-0. And so I guess that means they're in the Champions League, first season back in the Prem. Or no, that wasn't even first year back in the Prem. That was in League One, if I'm correct. They won the Euro Super Cup as well. Chelsea have just been turned into an absolute monster of a team. They got to the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup again. They lost in the Papa John's Trophy Southern Section third round, which is a little bit of a surprise there. But I guess Tottenham might have played a stronger side in that one. They did end up losing in the FA Cup third round after a replay, and they did lose in the first knockout round to Bayern Munich in the Champions League. So as they went into the Championship, they didn't have a European competition for the first time. They reached the fourth round of the Caribou Cup, losing to Man United, and got to the FA Cup semi-final, losing to Spurs. But again, a very, very comfortable season, getting that promotion back to the Prem. Now, we do want to see how Yeovil got on over these years. What did they do? How are they getting on? And where are they? So they're actually in League One currently. But how has that happened? So they were in Prem. We saw them get bottom. They got bottom of the Championship and actually in League One finished 19th. This season, it looks like they finished in 22nd. So they actually got relegated to League Two, unfortunately. I think they might have actually crossed paths, Chelsea and Yeovil, so never played. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those, isn't it, really? I wasn't expecting them to be world beaters straight away. What funding have they got? They got 104 million still. What signings have they made? They've signed Charlie Savage by the looks of it. But if we just jump back a couple of seasons, we can see 115,000 spent when they went into the Championship. Not much really at all being spent there. 205 the season after in League One when they first got there, which is a little better, but again, still not fantastic. And then finally, most recently, 550k spent. So they are increasing that amount. I guess they're not going crazy with it, which is good. What's their facilities? I mean, they haven't been improving their facilities really by the looks of it. But there you go. I guess what'll be interesting is to see how things continue. Is this like, are they having to reset almost and then power back up? Or are they just going to slump back down to the National League? We can see, though, they got knocked out in the Caribou Cup second round in most recent season. Papa John's Trophy, they got knocked out in the second round. FA Cup first round against Hartlepool. Season before that, I mean, they've not had a great time of it, really. FA Cup second round against Rotherham, losing 3-0. Papa John's Trophy, they got knocked out in the group stage, and they lost in the first round of the Carabao Cup. And then again, Carabao Cup and FA Cup, they lost in the first round of both of those. So, not great, let's say that. Well, let's jump again, see if there's any improvement for Yeovil, and if Chelsea get back to the top of the table as we'd probably expect. Okay, another 5 years on, and they're in the Premier League still, as probably expected, but they actually finished 6th. So they're back in European contention, maybe not quite to the level that they'd hoped over those years, as they are quite a good chunk away from the next big team, Newcastle. Obviously, in the save, they're going to have lots of money. Spurs all the way down in 12th as well. Interesting to see. Let's take a look at their history then. So they got that promotion to the Premier League, finished 8th, 3rd, 5th, and then obviously this year 6th. So still done pretty well. It's not too bad at all. Have they got to any cup finals? They won the FA Cup most recently, so they're back in on that front. They got to the final of the Europa League, but lost to Real Madrid on penalties. Otherwise, losing in the quarterfinals in the FA Cup. Nothing else there. We can also see when they finished 3rd that season, they got knocked out in the Champions League, but went into the Europa League, losing to Marseille in the semi-finals. They didn't get very far in the FA Cup. Ended up losing to Burnley, of all teams, as well. And it was an early out in Caribou Cup 2-1 against Fulham. And then we've also got the Caribou Cup in the season prior as well, where they lost to Blackburn, and then in the FA Cup losing to Leeds in the semi-final. So not great. Transfer history though, they're still spending massive amounts of money. Balogun coming in. You've got the likes of Konate as well. James Justin for 50 million. Jeez, that's a lot of money. A bunch of players moving to Southampton on loan or permanently. Dembele coming in, Araujo coming in, Rodrigo. So, yeah, they're 305 million pounds. Wow. They brought in Mariba, Ansu Fati, Kulusevski, Dodo, Varane. They've not been shy on spending. Now, they might not have been, but we know that Yeovil have been previously. They're in the Championship. Okay, they're in bottom of the Championship, so they haven't done fantastically, but it's progress. They were in League... Well, we'd just seen them get relegated to League 2, so they must have done something to help them rise up the ranks again. So we saw them get down to League 2. They won that straight away, got promotion, finished mid-table in League 1, and then got 4th, so went up in the playoffs last season. That led to them, unfortunately, being relegated this time around. But it's good to see that there are increase and positiveness that's going on. Let's take a look at the transfer history then of Yeovil. We can see they are spending a little bit more. 1.8 million is kind of the max that they've spent, but it's good to see. They are spending a bit of money now, trying to keep themselves up, that sort of thing. Alfie Jones coming in, Marcus Brown, Zach Swanson, Ryan Hedges, all players that are actually pretty good. Andre Dazelle coming in from Wickham. They've also got the likes of Toby Amol and Harry Anderson. And then we can also see Joe Hugill coming in from previously Man United, now Bolton. Goldschmidt, Abbey. Goldschmidt they spent 1.5 million on. So, I mean, he doesn't look too bad, does he? For a little regen there. But yeah, so they've done all right, all things considered. I don't know what has happened there. Okay, granted, they've not been fantastic in any of the cup competitions, but they did manage to get promotion after beating Portsmouth and Fleetwood to go up into the Championship. And they are clawing their way back, but they're not gone all the way back down to the National League. So that's always good to see. We'll jump one more time, see if there is any further improvement or if it is kind of this level that Yeovil will be at. And if Chelsea, are they going to win the league after that kind of drop down the divisions? We'll have to see. So we are here, 2035 now, so a lot of players have left. Although, saying that, Gonçalo Ramos, you've got Pino, you've got Mariba still in there. You've also got Kai Havertz as well. So a lot of players still about. Let's take a look at history. So they finished 9th, but it doesn't look like they've actually managed. They've hung around Europa spots, jumped into the Champions League once, but otherwise very, very limited in what they've actually been able to achieve since getting back to the Prem. Looking at the schedule, though, we can see Europa Super Cups. It looks like actually they might have won. Yeah, they've won the Europa League a couple of times. They've certainly done that. Got to the final a bunch as well, losing to Napoli there. Got to the quarterfinals, losing to West Ham. And we can also see in this one, again, semi-finals against Newcastle. Ended up getting absolutely battered in the end. But there you go. So not quite the team that they were, but still not done too badly to get up there. They only spent 9.5 million most recently on players coming in, but 61 million the season before that. 143 million pounds. Blimey. That's a lot of money. Yusuf Demir leaving, Kulusevski, Mudryk as well. He's gone. So players they've signed, they are making money. I mean, look at this. 59 million pounds they spent fighting for the top European spots. Brought in 147 million. Jovic, Salah, Araujo, Balogun, Lovato, and Quinteros all making them a bit of money. And Joe Gomez went off to Al Nassr. Bit of a surprising one, but there you go. And then also 168 million spent here with 196 coming in. Again, Yusuf Demir being one of those players that came in. I mean, kind of crazy, really. But there you go. So with Chelsea, it was a case they were able to get back up there. Maybe not quite at the level they hoped. Maybe losing those big players over those years coming up kind of caused a bit of an issue for them. But we can also take a look at Yeovil. Now, this is really interesting to see. How have they got on? So they're in League One, so they weren't quite able to escape that. But it looks like they are definitely at that level where they're bouncing between League One and the Championship. Because, yeah, you can see they got that promotion, relegated as we saw. But they got another promotion through the playoffs, got relegated again, this time second from bottom. Then won the league, and then unfortunately came bottom again. And now they're sat in 13th. So they're not going up this year. Little bit of a shame. But good to see that they are fighting for the championship and to get in there. Looking at transfers, have they increased the amount they're spending? It doesn't really look like it, no. Saying that though, 135k there. 6 million brought in. Melvin Kelly being the player that has obviously brought in a bit of cash for them. Season before, 1.4 million spent, 2.4 brought in. Again, making more money than they're spending, which I guess is good. It is a sustainable way of doing things. But 6.25 million, I think that might have been the season just after the championship, actually. Because I'm pretty sure this is the championship season. But interesting. They did end up spending a good bit of money. Who did they spend it most on? That's the biggest question. You've got Daniel Grimshaw, who's actually now in Al Rayyan. Again, very interesting to move. And then Mohamed Tricky is the other one who's actually leaving Hull at the end of the season. But there you go. Okay. Yeah, that's a thing. So it certainly is the case that, yeah, they're down to 2 million now. So it can't have been that great. They have increased their facilities a bit and the youth recruitment and all that, which is good to see. Maybe not as much as they probably should have done. But yeah, as I was saying, so as we can kind of conclude from that kind of bit of experiment, we can see that Yeovil, yeah, playing in the Premier League certainly does help teams. Initially, no, because they will drop down divisions, but the amount of money they bring in will overall help them in fighting for a higher level in the long term. And does dropping Chelsea down to the National League affect them? Yes and no. They did shoot up the divisions back to the Premier League, but they haven't quite got to the level that they were before. Not far off. They are winning European titles, but instead of Champions Leagues, it's Europa Leagues. But there we go. We will leave it there. Thank you for watching. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you in the next one.